Hello there, my name is Tumitladi, and welcome to what I do, tutoring, mentoring, anyone who wants to learn programming or developing mobile apps, software apps, web apps. For now, we're going to focus on a web app, but a specific web app that's unique when it comes to bridging software, mobile, even web. We call it a web API. Some people refer to it as RESTful service. Some people refer to it as a backend. This is not it. But let's go to this. Never mind this. This is me still working on my app. So let me close that so it doesn't interrupt. Okay. So when it comes to a web API, I want us to talk about this class called program, right? So this is what I want us to talk about, right? So I've learned because someone taught me there's a skill of registering all the services using one line, right? So this is how the program class starts, right? So here, in fact, this is a code that I used to block other countries from accessing, my website. So, but it becomes difficult whenever I send a new app update to Google Play Store or App Store, because they still need to check certain things that I'm compliant, right? So here, this is where you show for page, this is where you say the web API should use HTTPS redirection for security. It should use static files like CSS and images. It should use the routing, and then this is the most important that we spoke about last time, the authentication and authorization. And here we're gonna map the controllers and the endpoints, and this for signal R, and then we run it, right? Then there's a folder called installers, and this is where I want to focus on. So the first thing is the interface. So this is something that was taught to me, to say, listen, with one line of code you can register all your services, and then this kind of framework, it will resolve everything, because sometimes this file or this class becomes so chaotic. All right, let me show you, for example. So I'm gonna have an interface, right? And I'm gonna have only one method, right? And I'm gonna pass in these two parameters, iService collection and iConfiguration, right? It doesn't return anything. So, and then I'm gonna have iInstaller or the installer extension, right? So this is what will resolve every single thing that I pass to it, right? And then for each service that I pass to it. So let's start with the very first service called Automapper. I'm still gonna show you what Automapper is and how it's helpful in building modern applications, especially web applications. So this is how we configure Automapper on ASP.NET Core, right? So we are implementing the interface, and here is that method, and then this is what I'm doing, to say service.add Automapper for the entire domain, right? And then we also have what we call Swagger. There's a video that I'm gonna make when it comes to Swagger, because the back end, you need to be able to build it properly. So you need some sort of a UI, and in this case it's Swagger. So Swagger also implements this one method, and this is how we configure Swagger. I'll touch a little bit young on Swagger when I do a specific video, when it comes to Swagger. So, and then we have a signal R. So this is how I configure the signal R, to say services.addSignalR, and then I configure the options for it. So this is what the mobile app will need to interact with, right? I also have, let's see, one of the biggest, which is MVC installer. So here I add the controllers, and then I also have the filters. This way you configure the filters. I also have a fluent validation. I add the authentication and JWT bearer for authorization, authentication and authorization, right? It's using token system. And then authorization, specifically when it comes to these are the policies that I implemented for controllers and for APIs. This is something that works for me. And finally, this is something that we need to talk to Firebase when it comes to push notifications, because A mobile application can send a request to the backend. A backend will then say, okay, I need to alert other users on the mobile app. So this is how I do it, right? And then finally, DB installer. So now this is the brain, the heart, right? So this is where I set up a way to communicate with the database using SQL server, passing in the connection string. And then this is why I say you're gonna add identity call, and then this is where we configure the options for that identity call. One of them is a default logout and makes a fail attempt, and then I'm gonna say you're gonna use the roles, and then you're gonna use entity framework stores. This is what talks to database, and you're gonna use it default token providers, and this is where I register all my dependencies for my services for dependency injection. Do you understand? One of them is gonna be, how does the backend send SMSs? How does the backend automatically send email? So you need to register them as services using singleton. But we'll talk about this. Do you understand? And I can show you all of these things. So basically, this is what a web API is when it comes to configuring it and setting it up from the program class, which is this guy, with one line of code. You can imagine, that all of this, Automapper, Swagger, you see, this is a lot of code. You understand? Signal R, MVC, and finally DB. So this will clog and will make it this class, unreadable. So as a developer, you need to separate specific functions that you want to be executed. So if this sounds good for you, I do this on weekdays from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. Just for 25 rand per session, and I'm gonna have a session now in the next 25 minutes. That sounds good? Hit me up.